Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, how's it going? I hope you are in the good condition. Amin. Before we start, let me to introduce myself. I'm Indriana Vantari. I'm from 5 TBI B, and my number student is 20174044060. Okay, in this occasion, I will discuss about Islamic education at the time Rasulullah and Khulafaur Rasyidin. Let me to introduce the background. The progress of Islamic education that we can feel at this time is the form of the rule of the Rasulullah, who became the main mover and teacher first in the world of Islamic education. Rasulullah SAW is figure who used as benchmark in teaching of ideal Islamic education. His able achieving education goals in characteristic by real practice carried out by friends and Muslims, as well as the many development of knowledge at the time. Education is process that direct human to good things. It can be said that education is process of transformation and internalizing knowledge. In reality, humans really need education because with education, humans can develop all their potential. In addition, education is process of changing attitudes for the better. Therefore, it can be said that the existence of education is one of the most important things, especially in the view of Islam. The following is quite about education in the view of the Prophet or the Rasulullah is, whosoever follows a path to seek knowledge therein, God will make easy for him path to paradise. Education is not only the right, but the duty of every Muslim, male or female. The best gift from father to child is education and upbringing. At the time of Rasulullah, Islamic education took place in two periods, namely Mecca period and the Medina period. The Mecca period is the initial stage of the development of Islamic education and is centered in Mecca, while the Medina period is further period of the development of Islamic education as well as the center of its movement activities. Okay, I will discuss about Islamic education Mecca period. Islamic education in Mecca is marked by several things. The Meccan period is the beginning of the first revelation. At the time, he was still doing da'wah or teaching in secret or hiding. The Prophet Muhammad's learning teaching methods that were extracted from practice that can be evaluated within the framework of education teaching are telling learning, teaching by observation, demonstration, learning, teaching by comparison, question answer, learning by doing, experience methods. Before the apostle taught knowledge to wide range of Muslims, the first educated his family, starting with his wife, children, cousin, and the uncle. In addition to his family, the apostle also educated those closest to him, such as his friend. The principle of Islamic education in Mecca is marked by the existence of monotheism education. Tawhid education is science related to faith about the oneness of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, which is the basis for Islam. What the apostle does is to instill the value of monotheism into the soul of every individual Muslim so that their soul is monotheistic and can be practiced through action and behavior in everyday life. Rasulullah SAW always tried to adapt to his community environment so as not to be carried away into the condition and circumstance of his environment. With his extraordinary natural potential, he was able to maintain his balance so as not to be carried away by the cultural currents of his society, which at the time tend to be negative. There are several verses of Quran which are the initial instruction for the prophet to give warnings or teaching to his people, namely Quran Surat Al-Alaq ayat 1 till 5 and Quran Al-Mudassir ayat 1 till 7. Whenever he received a revelation, he immediately conveyed it to his people accompanied by explanation and example of his practice. The apostle began his duty to convey Islam teaching right after the revelation of the second letter, namely Al-Mudassir, ayat 1 till 7. However, this was done secretly, which was still addressed to his family and closest people. The first people who accepted the teaching of Islam at the time were his family from his wife, namely Siti Khadijah, Ali bin Abi Thalib, and Zaid bin Thabit. Then the closest people in question were the companions of the apostle, such as Abu Bakr, and after Abu Bakr were addressed to other friends, and they were known as As-Sabiqun al-Awwal. The implementation of Islam education for the first time was carried out of the Prophet's house. The pattern of education is by giving advice about the life of the world and the hereafter and practicing it in the real world relate to noble character of worship, namely worshipping Allah alone and staying away from polytheism. Superstition. Another place used as place for the implementation of education was also carried out by the house of Arqam bin Abil Arqam, with the reason that the apostle chose that place, namely Arqam's loyalty and the strategic location of the house was also safe from the reach of the Quraysh. In addition to hiding or secretly, another thing to do is openly. This appeal was addressed to the family of Banu Abdul Muttalib. Some of them welcomed it well and some rejected, such as Abu Lahab and his wife. This overstage is marked by presence. Quran Surat Al-Hijr ayat 94. After the first reached the apostle immediately spread revelation to all residents of the Arabian Peninsula, both a resident of Mecca and from outside Mecca. This requires a long process. It is not an easy thing to invite the people of Mecca to follow the teachings of the Prophet. There are many obstacles and resistance in every attempt made. Despite all that, the apostle always responded patiently. The pattern of education is the same as clandestine stage, namely teaching about monotheism as the basis for Islam. According to Mahmud Yunus, through his writing, he said the development of Islamic education during the Mecca period include: first, religious education. In this education, it is not permissible to associate the name of Allah with the name of idols. Secondly, academic and scientific education. This education studies human life starting from clot of blood to form and studies the event or phenomenon on the universe. Third is moral and character education. In this education, Rasulullah taught his companions to have good morals according to teaching of monotheism. Fourth, physical education or health. This education imposes of priorities health values such as cleanliness of clothes, cleanliness of the body, and residence. Two, Islamic education at the time of Prophet Muhammad period of Medina. At the time of Rasulullah, Islamic education was carried out in two periods, namely Mecca and Medina periods. Mecca period in the first stage of sponsorship of Islamic education and its center in Mecca. The Medina period is the second phase of Al-Munawwarah as an advanced stage of Islamic development as well as the center of its activities. First, the implementation of Islamic education in Medina. If the main characteristic of Islamic education during the Mecca period was monotheism education or the cultivation of Aqidah, then the main characteristic of Islamic education during the Medina period was social and political education. Islamic education in the Medina period was time when the education of the Rasulullah was specialist in several fields need to build new world civilization based on revelation. At this time, the policy of Prophet Muhammad recommended that his followers memorize and write down the verse of the Quran that he had taught. During the educational process in Medina, the Prophet did many things, including first, the first thing that the Prophet Muhammad did in Medina was to lay firm and solid foundation in the life of Islam. Mosque as center of worship activities and to teach Islamic religious education. In this mosque, the Prophet taught and this teaching presented the principle of Islamic teaching. In other words, Islamic education in Medina, the learning process first took place in mosque. Next is the Prophet Muhammad unit the Ansar and the Muhajirin on the basis of religion. And then categories and develop character for the brotherhood of the non-Muslim residents of Medina, namely Jews and Christians, to tolerate each other, not to interfere with each other, to always live in harmony, and to jointly defend the city of Medina. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ eradicated the remains of hostility and conflict between tribes by tying the ties of brotherhood between them. The Sharia of Zakah and fasting came down with an education for citizens in social responsibility to establish cooperation and help each other. Islamic education materials in Medina, Mahmud Yunus argued that the essence of Islamic education and teaching given by the Prophet. The Medina period was in addition to religious education, moral education, and health education. It was also expanded with Sharia education materials related to the community, for example, matters related to association between fellow human beings such as civil law, matters related to qisas such as criminal law, matters related to the economy and government, and etc. According to Zuhairini, the Islamic education material in Medina, which is continuation of the educational material in Mecca, is social, political, and citizenship education. Socio-political education and citizen. In the Medina phase, the educational material provided is more complex in scope compared to the Mecca phase educational material. Among the implementation of Islam education in Medina are as follows: educational uhwah among the Muslim. Next is social welfare education, namely the fulfillment of basic needs rather than daily life. Further, everyone must work for a living. Next is family welfare education and relative. That it means husband, wife, and children, because this is the core for the formation of wider human society. Next is defense and security education. The existence of troops or security and defense unit is an absolute thing that must exist to support the Islamic da'wah, so that the delivery of da'wah is more effective and comprehensive. Education in Islam. In Islam, children are the inheritors of Islamic teachings developed by the Prophet Muhammad, and it is the younger generation of Muslims who will continue the mission of conveying Islam to all corners of the world. Therefore, there are many warnings in the Quran related to it. The outline of children's education material in Islam exemplified by the Prophet Muhammad SAW as hinted by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala in the letter Luqman, verse 13 till 19 are as follows. First, Tahwid education. Second, prayer education. Third, education of manners in deliberation. Fourth, education of etiquette and manners in the family. Next is personality education. And the last is health education. Yes, there are describing about methods of teaching Islamic at the time Prophet Muhammad SAW. And also method of teaching Islamic education at the time Rasulullah is to create a conducive and pleasant atmosphere in the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad using various methods. This is done to avoid boredom and boredom. Among the methods used by the Rasulullah are: first, discourse methods; two, dialogue; third, discussion and Q&A; fourth, demonstration method; five, experimental method. In addition, the method of moral education is also carried out by reading verses of the Quran which contain stories of the people of ancient time, so that the lessons are taken. Yeah, it's enough. Next, I will discuss about Islamic education at the time of the composition of the Prophet Muhammad or Khulafaur Rasyidin. Firstly, I will discuss about Islamic education of friends of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. The first Islamic caliph appointed and agreed upon by the combination of the Prophet and the Muslim of Islam was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Initially, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was appointed directly by the Messenger of Allah to replace him or Rasulullah as the prayer priest. From this, Umar bin Khattab concluded that Abu Bakr was the person who was directly appointed by the Prophet to be first caliph because he was mandated to replace the position of the prayer priest, which at the time was the most important thing, and the Prophet rarely gave this position even though he was sick. So, the combination of the Prophet pledged Abu Bakr as-Siddiq the first caliph with the sacred pledge. Although Abu Bakr's reign was quite short, he was able to play an important role in fighting Ridda or apostasy, such as destroying false prophet, people who were reluctant to pay tax and zakah, and fighting tribes who want to leave the teaching of Islam. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq also played a role in collecting the writing of the Quran by sending Zaid bin Thabit. A. Educational materials. First, faith education by instilling that Allah SWT is the only God worthy of worship. 2. Moral education, for example, the etiquette of entering the house. Honestly, good manners in neighbor, how to get along in society, and etc. 3. Worship education, such as procedure for performing prayers, fasting, zakat, and hajj. The last is health education, for example, movement in prayer that improve one's physical and spiritual abilities. B. Educational institution. Mosques and kitabs are facilities that become a place or place for learning that existed during the caliph of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to learn knowledge about the teaching of Islam. Next is Islamic education during Umar bin Khattab. The implementation of Islamic education during the Caliph Umar bin Khattab was more advanced than the previous period because the condition of the country during Umar's time was safe and stable. The mosque was designed as educational center. This was proven when he ordered his commanders, if they had conquered an area to immediately build a place of education as well as place of worship or mosque. After that, Umar chose teachers in each region to teach Islamic education about the content of the Quran and the other Islamic teaching to the residents of the region. In the teaching, it is also talked about the use of Arabic, which is intended to make it easier for residents to explore the teaching of Islam. Teaching methods also began to be developed at this time. This is marked by teaching process with the student in circle around the teacher of the courtyard of the mosque. Umar bin Khattab is also called the father of kindergarten science because during his reign, special place for children to study was established, namely in the corners of the mosque. At this time, also gave birth to many scholars such as Ibnu Mas'ud, expert on jurisprudence, interpretation, and hadith. Next is Mu'az bin Jabal is teacher of religion of the Quran in Palestine. Ubadah is teacher of religion and Quran in hymns. Abu Darda is teacher of religion and the Quran is in Damascus. Amr bin Ash as hadith expert and recorder of the Prophet's hadith. In the region of Umar bin Khattab, the main lessons were still related to reading and writing the Quran, memorizing and capturing the meaning of its contents, Aqidah and worship, as well as the main point, the Islamic religion. Other materials determined by Umar bin Khattab were teaching children to swim, archery, horse riding, and the art of war. Next is Islamic education during the period of Uthman bin Affan. Uthman bin Affan education system continued the education built by the previous government. At this time, Islamic education is more easily achieved by students who intend to demand Islamic teaching. More educational centers are available so that Islamic education can be reached not only one area. Teachers at this time are not appointed or authorized by the government. They work only with the hope of blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the subject of Islamic education is almost completely left to the people. The people who set their own education pattern so that there was instability in the world of education at the time. One of the most influential services of the Caliph Uthman was the collection of written verses of the Quran with the aim of minimizing disputes in the reading of Quran. Next is Islamic education during Ali bin Abi Talib. Islamic education at the time of Ali bin Abi Talib was disturbed or unstable because the political conditions that time were chaotic. Caliph Ali was more concerned with public safety than the education sector. However, in another opinion, it is stated that during Ali's time, formal education emerged, which included developing writing and reading subject matter under an educational institution. Although Caliph Ali was not too focused on education, at this time the educational process was mostly developed with the teaching and civilizing of the Quran and Sunnah. B. Educational center during the friendship period or Khulafaur Rasyidin. Educational center during the Khulafaur Rasyidin period include Mecca. The first teacher in Mecca was Mu'az bin Jabal, who taught the Quran and fiqh. In Medina, famous friends include Abu Bakar, Uthman bin Affan, Ali bin Abi Talib, and the others' friends. Basra, the famous friend here is Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. He is an expert in fiqh and the Quran. Kufah, famous friends here are Ali bin Abi Talib and Abdullah bin Mas'ud, which teach the Quran. He is an expert in interpretation and hadith and fiqh. So, we can conclude that one of the most important aims of Islam religion is to discover and improve abilities of humans who are born with knowing nothing from the wombs of their mothers and self-realization. The first teacher-educator who was charged to achieve this aim was Prophet Muhammad SAW. He tried to make depreciated and retrogressive society livable again with education teaching activities. Even though he faced various difficulties, the Prophet Muhammad, one of his duties was teaching. He attached importance to teaching people revelation that he received from Allah SWT, informing them, spreading knowledge, making actual things permanent and constant. His education and teaching activities were the first original model of Islam education and practice. The Prophet Muhammad's learning teaching methods that were extracted from his education activities, with them he tried to form a new world view on the people and build new society. Are telling, learning teaching by over observation, demonstration, learning by comparison, question answer, learning by doing experiment methods, and etc. In addition to learning teaching methods which are used in today's educational understanding, there are methods which reflect personality, way of communication, education, understanding to the Prophet Muhammad, peculiar to himself. These are teaching by developing empathy, one-to-one or face-to-face learning material teaching, and learning teaching by writing methods. And also for the Khulafaur Rasyidin, just like the methods several of his Okay, I think it's enough for me. Thanks for your watching and thanks for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye everyone.